The year is 1312, and the Order of the Temple has been decimated, destroyed by the machinations and greed of the French King Philip. Pope Clement V has been pushed into issuing a papal bullum, Pastoris Preeminente, charging the Templars with heresy and demanding their property be seized by the Holy See. James of Malay and almost every Templar in France have been executed after farce trials, the evidence of which was extracted under torture. The method of execution is burning at the stake. However, the Temple's story is far from over. While France was their headquarters, they had strongholds all over Europe, as would be expected from their mercantile operations, especially strong in England, Scotland and Portugal, and in these countries they did not suffer the same barbaric reprisals. Edward II had succeeded his father Edward I in 1307, a mere 3 months before the betrayal of the Order. As with many monarchs at the time, his reaction was sceptical, and he was suspicious of Philip. This was in keeping with Edward's character as someone reasonable but not politically astute, as Edward was betrothed to Philip's daughter Isabella. A modicum of political restraint may have been advisable, but Edward remained steadfast, writing to kings across Europe, voicing his doubts. However, he could not forget his subservience to the papacy, and complied with the bullum, and had 144 English Templars arrested, but in keeping with his character, Edward's treatment of the Templars was far more kind than Philip. The difficulty Edward faced was that he didn't actually like his new bride, but he was far more enamoured with his old friend, Piers Galveston, for which reasons you can probably guess. Such was the disdain for his relationship at court that Galveston, the aforementioned courtier, was suspended to Ireland on pain of excommunication if he returned. Edward realised that he would need the Pope on his side to lift the excommunication, and so in November 1308 the Templars were rearrested, ensuring in 1309 that Galveston would return to England and the Inquisition were granted access to the Templars. 3 centres of Inquisition were set up in London, Lincoln and York, and these proceedings continued until the summer of 1311. The Inquisitors were frustrated that their usual methods of extracting information were not tolerated in England, where trial was by jury, not the rack. Most of the Templars were absorbed into other orders. Only one Templar faced serious punishment, William the Moor, the Master Templar in England, and such he was sent to the Tower of London, where he perished, still waiting for the Pope's forgiveness. Edward himself subsumed the Templar holdings and lands into his own estate, and profited from the revenue. In Spain and Portugal, the Templars had and still hold a sacred and revered legacy, as they were instrumental in the Reconquista by helping to drive out the Muslim Moors and re-Christianize Spain. In these lands, they were far more associated with their role as warriors rather than merchants and bankers. But it was for this reason that a small civil war broke out in Spain between King James II of Aragon and the Temple Order. Like Edward, James was highly sceptical of the charges, but these Templars had no intention of going as quietly as their brothers in France. They fortified their holdings and castles, converted their wealth to gold, and readied for a fight to the death. James rightly could not tolerate castles in his territory being held against him, and began a new campaign in Miravet and Ascot to bring the order to heel. In the end, no brother would confess, even under torture, and these proceedings were promptly abandoned, and the surviving brothers were pensioned off to live in the local monasteries, absorbed into Hospitallers, and a new military order which would now be based in Valencia. In Portugal, King Didites restructured the old order as the Order of Christ, and negotiated official recognition from the new Pope John to return the Templars' possessions to this new order, even transferring their banner to the order's original home at Lisbon, where the rotunda was patterned after the Great Temple. In essence, the Knights Templar survived in plain sight, serving the King of Portugal. The Order of Christ was finally dissolved in 1834, but it survives today as an order of merit for service to Portugal. In Cyprus, as in Aragon, the order were far more militarised, but there was not much resistance to the bullum, and the 118 on the island, most of which were actual knights, had been imprisoned by 1307 in various keeps. As with all others, they refused the accusations against them, maintaining that they were loyal and true. Evidence was heard from a panel of 56 non-Templar witnesses to the charges of devil worship. These would include the Royal Seneschal and Bishop of Beirut, all of which confirmed the reputation of the Temple character and wrecked the accusations against them. In France the mood was shifting, and a council was established in Vienne, where many of the senior clerics and bishops demanded to hear the testimony of the Templars for themselves. However, they were undoubtedly aware of the fact that Philip kept a large army only 18 miles away in Lyon, and was putting extreme pressure on Clement to continue the persecution of the order, culminating in another bullum, Vox in Excelsior, which is to mean a voice on high. And Clement, being a French pope, held fealty to the French king Philip. The extracted confessions of the Templar masters were used when Clement held his final ruling, and the order was not even given the chance to defend itself. Clement danced his way around the injustice of the bullum, arguing that hearing counter-evidence would cause the Templar holdings to fall into ruin. So on that day in 1312, with a stroke of the pen, the Order of the Temple, which had served steadfast to triumph from disaster for 192 years, was no more. The Templar property was ceded to the Hospitallers to help with their mission in the East. In Spain, the Temple property was divided between secular rulers and the Hospitallers, and the aforementioned new military order in Valencia. However, Philip was denied a full land grab, and he was denied the opportunity to become a Crusader king. History has a strange way of avenging past wrongs, and as the wheel of history turns, those on top invariably find themselves on the bottom in time. The Templars today are household names, famed for their deeds of courage and honour fighting in the Holy Land. They are part of natural culture, international history, and Templar is a brave word for bravery and honour. Much about it is still covered in the fog of history, and their history is complex. Like the Spartans and the samurai, they have been mythologized and romanticized, and what they were upon their destruction was a far call from the handful of knights who stood with Hugh of Paynes in Jerusalem to defend the pilgrims. But one will be hard-pressed to find a person in the Western world who had not heard of the Order of the Temple, or of their great deeds. As for the man who destroyed them, his name is hidden under the dust of history, and his dynasty ended in a much sharper end.